Hi everyone and welcome back to my next series of crypto app with SwiftUI. In this video, we will create crypto news flow and AI summarization. So when the app starts, the user opens crypto news view. Crypto news view requests headlines from NewsViewModel. NewsViewModel calls NewsService and we will have a function fetch news in the NewsService. NewsService hits NewsAPI and returns news article array, which will be displayed as a list of articles. UI shows headlines list, and when you tap a headline, you will open NewsDetailView showing the full article. Let's open our Xcode and let's get started. As always, let's start with the services. We create NewsService, new empty file, and we will call it NewsService. NewsService will use API to fetch the latest crypto news. As usually, we will import foundation and start with the class. I'm setting this up as a singleton using static let shared. This allows us to use this one instance of the service anywhere in our app without creating new copies. I also make the initializer private to force everyone to use that shared instance. Now let's create the function. Here's our main function. It takes one parameter called completion because network calls take time. Next, we define our API key and the specific URL string we want to hit. I prepared a URL string for you, and I will explain you now where to get the API key. So each of you will have your own API key. First, you have to register at newsapi.org. So I go to login because I already registered. Once you log in, you will immediately have your API key here. Do not post it, don't public it. It's your private API key that you should use in your app. You'll also see how many hits you've done and when those 1000 hits are going to reset. So I will copy my API key and I will insert it into the variable API key. Now let's continue with the GOT statement. It safely converts the string, URL string, into a real URL object. If the URL is invalid for some reason, we just return an empty array and stop. Now let's create a network task. We use URLSession shared data task to create a networking task that goes to our URL. It gives us a closure with three things: the data, if it worked, a response, which is a metadata, and an error, if something broke. Now let's handle the errors. These two lines of code cast the response to an HTTP URL response to print the status code. So if you see 200 means success, while a 404 or 500 helps us debugging issues quickly. Even if there was no error, we need to make sure we actually got data back from the server. So we need to guard the data. Now we need to turn that raw computer data into Swift objects. Therefore, we create a JSON decoder. Since news APIs usually send dates in a specific format, I'm setting the date decoding strategy to ISO 8601, so it handles the timestamps automatically. Next up, we wrap the decoding in a do-catch block. We must call resume at the very end. The network task starts in a suspended state, so this line actually pushes the button to start the request. We have an error, cannot find NewsAPI respond. Let's create this structure in the end. Alright, so don't forget to insert here your actual API key, and let's move on to the next service, which will be responsible for AI summarization of top 3 articles. Let's go to our services folder and create another new empty file, and we will call it Cohere Summary Service. As always, we import foundation and we create a new class. Just like before, I'm storing my API key here. So I create a private let API. And let me show you how you can get your API key from Cohere. So of course you need to register at cohere.com. Go to cohere.com and sign in. If you don't have an account, please create an account, because you need an account in order to get your own private API. Here you have a tab API keys. So we go to that API keys, and I already have one, but if you do not have any default API key, just click new trial key and you will regenerate a new key. So I'm getting the one I already have. Once you get the key, you copy paste it here. Let's continue with creating a function summarize, because we want to summarize top 3 articles and display it on the top of the page. This function takes a list of strings, our headlines, and the API needs one single block of text, so we use join separator here to stack the headlines on top of each other. Then we create our prompt, instructing the AI exactly what to do. We need to summarize into 2 to 3 sentences. Now let's configure the post request. This part is different from the NewsAPI. We create a URL request object because we need to customize it. We set the method to post because we are sending data to the AI. We also add headers, one for authorization and one to tell the server we are sending JSON data. Next, we will build the body. This is our payload. It's the data we are sending. We created a dictionary with the parameters Cohere expects. For example, we have a message, our prompt, our model, so I'm using command R+, temperature 0.5 for balance of creativity and accuracy, and finally we convert this dictionary into data using JSON serialization, and we attach it to the request body. Now we will handle the response. Here we send the request. We look at the raw JSON dictionary and specifically hunt for the key called text, which contains the AI's answer. If we can't find it, we fail. Now the last thing we have to do is formatting and completion. We type completion. If you find the text, I use trimming characters to clean up and empty space on new lines at the start or end of the AI's response. Then we pass the clean summary back to our app. And don't forget the resume to actually start the network call. Let's continue with the view model. We create an empty file and call it NewsViewModel. Import foundation. And now we create the class. The view model is the bridge between the data services and the user interface. I'm going to make it observable object. And we will have two published properties. One for articles and another one for summary. Whenever these variables change, the UI will automatically reload to show the new data. Now we build the function fetch news. I use weak self. This is a Swift memory management trick to prevent retained cycles, basically ensuring our app doesn't leak memory if the user closes the screen while loading. We use dispatch queue main asynchronous to hop back onto the main thread, and then we save the downloaded articles to our list. We have the news, but we don't want to send all of it to the AI. That would be slow and expensive. I'm taking just the top 3 articles using prefix 3 and extracting just their titles. I also print them here just so we can debug it in the console. Now step 2, we call the AI. Finally, we pass those 3 headlines to our Cohere summary service. When the AI finishes thinking and returns the summary, we once again hop back to the main thread through this dispatch queue and update our summary text. This triggers the UI to replace loading with the actually AI generated text. Finally, we can move on to the UI section. We need 2 views, News Detail and Crypto News View. So let's start with the News Detail view. We import SwiftUI, and now we create the structure. This is our detail screen. This view doesn't make network calls. It simply waits to be given a single news article object, which we define right here as a property. Because we don't know how long the description might be, or if the user has large text enabled, we wrap everything in a scroll view. Inside that, we use a V-stack with leading alignment to make sure the text aligns to the left, like a standard article. First, we show the headline. I'm using title 2 and making it bold so it stands out clearly at the top of the screen. In our API, the description is optional. Sometimes it's missing. So we use e-flat to check if the description exists, and if it doesn't, Swift will just skip this part entirely instead of crashing or showing empty space. Now we have to provide the link. Since we only have a summary, we won't let the user read the original source. SwiftUI has a built-in link button that opens the URL in Safari automatically. Now let's create a navigation bar cleanup. To make the UI look clean, I'm setting the navigation bar mode to inline. This prevents the previous screen's large title from taking up too much space on the screen. And now I will just copy-paste the preview and we will see an example. This is an example of a detail page once we click on one of the articles. Now let's move to the second view, which is called Crypto News View. So we create again an empty file and import SwiftUI. Let's create a structure. And here we need our NewsViewModel. We initialize our NewsViewModel using stateObject. As soon as the view model updates its data, this view will automatically refresh. Now we can move on to the body. We wrap everything in a navigation stack, so we can move between screens. Inside that, I'm using a ScrollView. I prefer ScrollView over a standard list because it gives us total freedom to mix different types of content. For example, we will do our AI summary at the top and the news list at the bottom. At the very top, we display the AI summary. We are reading directly from ViewModel summary. When the app starts, this will say loading, and the second the AI responds, this text will magically update to the summary. I add a divider here to visually separate the AI part from the raw news list. Now we can continue with the crypto news list. Now for the articles, we iterate through our ViewModel articles array using ForEach loop. This creates a row for every single news item we fetched from the API. Inside the loop, we wrap each row in a navigation link. The destination means we tell it to go to NewsDetailView and we pass the specific article meant for that row. Inside the link, we design how the row looks, just a simple title and date stack. And here we will add some paddings. The last thing here is the preview. Now we have the list of articles and the AI summary. It's possible that you do not have the AI summary because I have a different model in Cohere summary. So if you go to Cohere summary service, add this part because Command R+ is deprecated. If we click on Crypto News View again, the summary is loading, and I always have a new summary from 2 to 3 sentences. It's because we send an API to Cohere Chat, and Cohere Chat generates a new summary for us. Once we click on the article, we can see the detail of the article. And that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to my channel. Next video will be the last video in this series, and in the next video we will build a notification.